Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. And joining me today is CJ Hero. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching us tonight. Here are tonight's headlines.
The Philippines announced that more than 24 million people in and around Manila will go into lockdown next week.
As troops carried torches and flags while marching alongside army vehicles at Myanmar's annual Armed Forces Day parade, Junta leader General Min Aung Hlaing again defended the coup and pledged to yield power after new elections.
North Korea threatened a further military buildup in response to President Joe Biden's condemnation of this week's missile launches, a weapons test that marked Pyongyang's first substantive provocation since the president took office.
England.
And strict lockdowns and travel limitations during the pandemic have sparked fresh interest in immersive virtual travel experiences, which have become more accessible and affordable with new apps and virtual reality hardware.
First, in the Philippines, the country announced that more than 24 million people in and around Manila will go into lockdown next week. The tougher restrictions in the country's economic heartland, which accounts for about a fifth of the population, come as more contagious variants of the virus fuel a resurgence in cases. Let's listen in.
Pero dahil nga po sa napakataas ng mga tao at mga kababayan nating nahahawa ngayon ng COVID-19, dahil na rin dito sa mga bagong variant, inaprobahan po ng ating presidente ang rekomendasyon ng inyong IATF na ilagay muli sa Enhanced Community Quarantine o ECQ ang National Capital Region, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna at Rizal o ang tinatawag nating Greater Manila Area. Ito po ay epektibo sa Lunes, 12:01 po ng umaga, March 29, at tatagal hanggang 4 ng Abril taong kasalukuyan. Naranasan na po natin mamuhay sa ilalim ng ECQ. Ano ba ho ang ECQ o Enhanced Community Quarantine? Ito po ang pagpapatupad ng mga panandaliang hakbang na nagpapataw ng limitasyon sa galaw or movement at transportasyon ng mga tao at mahigit na regulasyon ng operating industries. Sa madaling salita, homeliners po tayo uli. Sa bahay po tayo, except kung magtatrabaho tayo sa bukas na industriya, kung tayo po ay upper at para kumuha ng mga necessities gaya po ng mga pagkain at gamot.
Now, from Monday, people will have to work from home unless they are considered essential workers, and public transport will be halted. All mass gatherings will be banned. Nighttime curfews from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. will be enforced, and non-essential businesses will be shut.
More than 500 million people across the world have had COVID-19 vaccine jabs, according to an AFP tally from official sources. Over 512.91 million doses have been given in 167 countries and territories as vaccination campaigns begin to accelerate. Despite the huge effort to get jabs into arms, the pandemic is still surging in Europe and Latin America, where Brazil has now passed 300,000 deaths and Mexico with 200,000. And the rollout of vaccines is chronically unequal, with the United States accounting for more than a quarter of the global total and poorer nations lagging far behind richer ones. EU countries are also still struggling to get their inoculation drives off the ground, prompting angry outbursts from the top of French officialdom.
And Congressman thanks the frontliners in Hawaii. The congressman thanked the frontliners in the first year of its pandemic. Plus, the Merry Monarch Festival will return this summer with safety measures in place, of course. Alfred Acenas will tell us more about this. Hello, Alfred.
Aloha, Alma, and
Aloha.
CJ. And you know what? It's almost like yesterday. We were here a year ago.
True.
We've been doing live reports, and here we are as if we were going full circle. So I just want to salute you guys for hanging in there, especially as we get into the second year of this pandemic. Yes, a milestone for us here in Hawaii is that we had the distinct privilege to finally get to interview a member of Congress from our delegation here. In this case, it would be the Honorable Ed Case. And here's a short clip of the interview that we did earlier this week with him. Take a look.
As we look back over the last year, it was especially acute in those first couple of months. And I got on the phones with people that, had been working just days straight because there was so much demand, so much need. And they went home to their families, because they had to. They couldn't leave their families. They went from a hospital back into a situation like that. So there was a lot of risk all around. And so those are the folks that inspired me in the last year.
So, Alma, we posed that question to him about his thoughts in the past year of this pandemic. And there were other topics that we discussed, especially in regards to Women's History Month and a program in which he spearheaded in restoring under the current Biden administration. So stay tuned to Eagle News for those bits. Now, for the other topic is the resumption. Yes, the annual hula festival, the Merry Monarch, which was canceled last year, will kick off this year thanks to some cooperative efforts by the organizers and local governments. So this year, it's going to take place in the summer, unlike in previous years, which normally held around springtime, like April. Now, the difference between this year's competition is, according to the organizers, all the participant staff and a television crew will undergo a 5-day isolation period prior to entering the venue for the first time. And they're going to go through daily screenings and possibly random monitoring of the participants to check for symptoms. Another difference for this, Alma, is that the performance will take place in late June, but it's not going to be live, unlike in previous years. It's going to be recorded, and then it's going to be broadcasted at a local network leading up to the 4th of July weekend. And for those that don't know, the Merry Monarch Festival is an annual cultural festival involving a series of hula competitions from different groups, not just from here, but even from the mainland U.S. and other parts of the world. Alma?
Do you know if there are any, do you know the safety measures in place already for the Merry Monarch Festival? I'm sure there is.
Yes. In fact, right now, everything, all the details are in the works, and there's going to be, again, it's not going to take place right away, like next month, but it's going to take a little bit of time for coordination to do the testing, because anytime they go from one place to another, there's going to be some temperature checks and isolation. And one thing I almost forgot to point out, there's no live audience, no audiences whatsoever. So
Yes.
a setback, but hey, it's of
It's the new normal.
importance to the state.
Yes.
It's part of the new normal. Yeah, it's part of the new normal.
True.
Before I forget, there's one more piece of good news we want to share with you guys. For those who want to get married anytime soon and want to do it here in Hawaii, the city of Honolulu has made amendments to allow more attendance to wedding ceremonies. So let me just run them down for you. So now a maximum of 100 people are allowed for a wedding event. Outdoor venues only. For any table seatings, like in receptions, no more than 10 per group, and there will be temperature checks, whether at the place of ceremony or at the reception or anywhere in between, that has to be documented, and also sign in information for contact tracing. Bit of good news there for those who want to get married here, especially in Honolulu, Alma.
Indeed. Hey, what is the situation right now in Hawaii? You haven't told me about that. What measures, what anti-COVID measures are in place right now over there? Like
Okay,
here, we're
yeah.
going on a lockdown next week. What about there?
So if up until like 2 days ago, we were in double digits, which is really good for the state, because we've been ramping up our vaccination efforts, and I believe we've already crossed well over 500,000, which is roughly about 1/3 of the population. However, I mentioned 2 days ago, because yesterday and today we're back to triple digits, to about 125 cases. And so far, we've seen, unfortunately, we've had 459 deaths. Total cases since the pandemic began has crossed over 29,000. Now, the measures, I mentioned the vaccination. Now there's a call to remind all the islands and everyone else involved to make sure we still do our COVID testing. Okay, not just the vaccination, but the testing. So we're feeling the effects of what we have here called spring break from last couple of weeks, because of schools taking a week off. And we've had a surge of visitors here in the islands. Now we're averaging in the tens of thousands. We peaked around February in the 20,000. But it is short of the normal 30,000 that we used to get each day. So that's where we stand right now as far as COVID-19, Alma.
So tourism is kicking off as well, huh?
Yes, getting there. We're getting there.
Getting there, yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Alfred, for your updates there in Hawaii, and looking forward to more updates next week. Thank you so much.
Sometime soon, and I do need to do these live reports every now and then. After the Senate Eagle News, tuloy ang laban. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you, Alfred. Now on to Brazil, where they set a new daily COVID-19 death toll record of 3,650 on Friday, according to the health ministry, as the pandemic spins out of control in Latin America's largest economy. Since February, Brazil has seen record after record in fatalities and new cases of infection, as the country second hardest hit anywhere in the world after the United States, with more than 307,000 dead from the pandemic. It broke through the threshold of 3,000 fatalities in one day on Tuesday. The average daily toll over the past week is 2,400, more than triple what it was in early January. The toll has risen steadily due to factors including people's abandoning social distancing norms and a new virus variant that emerged here and is believed to be more contagious than the original strain. Another big problem is that the country's vaccination drive is moving slowly. So far, only 5.9% of the population of 212 million has received at least one dose of the coronavirus vaccines.
With the coronavirus spreading out of control in Brazil, the South American giant's neighbors are now feeling the heat as their new COVID-19 infections are also on the rise. Brazil surpassed 300,000 deaths from COVID on Wednesday and has seen record daily infections over the last week, with an average of 2,273 fatalities. Again, let's listen in.
Unfortunately, the dire situation in Brazil is also affecting neighboring countries. Cases have risen in Venezuela, particularly in the states of Bolivar and Amazonas, which border Brazil. A rise in cases has been reported in the Pando department in Bolivia, and ICU bed occupancy remains very high in Loreto, Peru. In the southern cone, cases continue to spike in Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay. In Paraguay, a majority of the ICU beds are occupied, and the health system is buckling under the pressure.
Close to 24 million of the 600 million people living in Latin America and the Caribbean have contracted COVID-19, and more than 750,000 have died, according to an AFP count based on official figures.
Staying in Brazil, the race to produce the first COVID-19 vaccine that is 100% Brazilian was launched on Friday with more than a hint of political posturing. Sao Paulo's Butantan Biomedical Institute announced in the morning it is developing vaccine and expects to start using it in July. Watch this.
Já é a vacina 2.0. Por quê? Porque nós aprendemos com as vacinas anteriores e agora nós sabemos o que é uma boa vacina para o Covid. É uma vacina que será mais imunogênica, quer dizer, os estudos clínicos em animais já demonstraram isso, e que, portanto, nós poderemos usar menores doses da vacina por pessoa.
Butantan is the largest vaccine producer in Brazil and makes the Coronavac shot produced by Chinese firm Sinovac the most widely used against the pandemic in the South American country. The vaccine needs to be authorized by Brazil's vaccine regulator, Anvisa, before it can start clinical trials in April. Sao Paulo State Governor João Doria said Butantan will be able to produce 40 million doses from May to July and 100 million by the end of the year.
In other news, as troops carried torches and flags while marching alongside army vehicles at Myanmar's annual Armed Forces Day parade, Junta Leader General Min Aung Hlaing again defended the coup and pledged to yield power after new elections. Take a look.
NLD အစိုးရရဲ့2010ရွေးကောက်ပွဲမှာမယိုးမသားဆောင်ရွက်ခဲ့တဲ့ဥပဒေမဲ့လွတ်ဆောင်ချက်တွေကြောင့်တပ်မတော်ကနိုင်ငံတော်တာဝန်ကိုမလွဲမရှောင်သာဥပဒေနဲ့ညီထမ်းဆောင်ခဲ့ရခြင်းပဲဖြစ်တယ်။ရေပေါ်ကာလတာဝန်များပြည့်မြတ်အောင်ဆောင်ရွက်ပြီးရင်လွတ်လပ်ပြီးတရားမျှတတဲ့ရွေးကောက်ပွဲပြန်လည်ပြုလုပ်ပြီးတာဝန်လွှဲပြောင်းတာဆက်လုပ်သွားမယ်။
But he also issued another threat to the largely peaceful civil disobedience campaign that has gripped the country since he took charge, warning that acts of terrorism, which can be harmful to state tranquility and security, were unacceptable. He said the democracy we desire would be an undisciplined one if they pay no respect to and violate the law. Armed Forces Day, which commemorates the start of local resistance to the Japanese occupation during World War II, usually accompanies a military parade attended by foreign officers and diplomats. But the junta has struggled to achieve international recognition since taking control of Myanmar and said 8 international delegations attended Saturday's event, including China and Russia. As the military commemorated Armed Forces Day in Naypyidaw, the committee representing Ping Dong-su Mutao, or CRPH, a group of ousted parliamentarians working underground against the junta, condemned the show of might after a bloody 7 weeks. They said we should not allow these military generals to celebrate after they killed our brothers and sisters, according to a UN Special Envoy who goes by the moniker Dr. Sasa. Speaking during a Facebook live stream of a global virtual protest which brought together the Myanmar diaspora around the world, his speech got 20,000 reactions.
We are staying in Myanmar. At least 19 people across the country were shot dead by security forces Saturday, according to emergency workers and witnesses, as the junta celebrates Armed Forces Day with a military parade in the capital, Naypyidaw. AFP has independently confirmed that 9 died in the central Mandalay region, 3 in northern Shan state, 1 in the ancient city of Bagan, and 6 in Myanmar's commercial hub, Yangon. An overnight gathering in front of a police station in the city's south, where demonstrators called for the release of their friends, became violent around midnight, and the shooting only stopped around 4 a.m., according to a resident. At least 5 died, one of them a 20-year-old boy in her neighborhood. Further north, near the notorious Insane Prison, a pre-dawn rally, which had protesters wearing bicycle helmets and shielded by sandbag barricades, devolved into chaos when soldiers started shooting. At least one was killed, a 21-year-old police officer, Chit Lin Thu, who had joined the anti-coup movement. His father, Joseph, said he was shot in the head and died at home. Nearly 330 people have died in demonstrations against the coup, including a large number killed by direct headshots from security forces, and more than 3,000 others have been arrested, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners Monitoring Group.
In other news, the collision between 2 trains killed at least 32 people and left more than 160 injured Friday in southern Egypt, a country plagued by fatal rail accidents widely blamed on crumbling infrastructure and poor maintenance. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi pledged tough punishment for those responsible for the crash, which came as his government wrestles with another major transport challenge, a giant container ship blocking the Suez Canal. Now, one of the trains was traveling between the southern city of Luxor and Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, while the other was on the way between Cairo and the southern city of Aswan. As authorities launched an investigation, Egypt's rail authority blamed the crash on unidentified passengers who activated emergency brakes in several carriages on one of the trains. A statement said one train hit the last carriage of the other, causing at least 2 carriages to overturn between the stations of Maraga and Tata. Egypt has been plagued with deadly train accidents in recent years. One of the deadliest was in 2002 when 373 people died as a fire ripped through a crowded train south of Cairo.
In other news, the owner of a megaship blocking Egypt's Suez Canal hopes to refloat it as early as Saturday, as the crisis forced companies to reroute services from the vital shipping lane around Africa. The MV Ever Given, which is longer than 4 football fields, has been wedged diagonally across the span of the canal since Tuesday, blocking the waterway in both directions. At a press conference in Japan Friday by the president of the company, Shoei Kizen, which owns the ship, told local media there were no signs of damage to its engines and various instruments. The total value of goods that are now blocked or will have to be shipped along an alternative route varies according to how it is estimated. Jonathan Owens, a logistics specialist at the University of Salford Business School, says the equivalent of $3 billion worth of merchandise normally passes through the canal each day. Lloyd's List, a British maritime shipping publication, says daily traffic in both directions is worth around $9.6 billion. Turkey on Friday offered to send a tugboat to help Egypt free the Panama-flagged vessel as it pressed on with its bid to mend ties with regional rivals. The United States also said it was ready to send support, including a team of U.S. Navy experts.
In other news, North Korea threatened a further military buildup on Saturday in response to President Joe Biden's condemnation of this week's missile launches, a weapons test that marked Pyongyang's first substantive provocation since the U.S. president took office. On Thursday, it launched 2 weapons from its east coast into the Sea of Japan, known as the East Sea in Korea. Following the launch, President Biden labeled the test a violation of UN resolutions and advised the isolated state against ramping up military testing, warning that there will be responses if they choose to escalate. Ri Pyong-chol, a leading official in North Korea's missile program who supervised the test, said the president's comments had revealed his deep-seated hostility to the regime. Such remarks from the U.S. president are an undisguised encroachment on our state's right to self-defense and provocation to it, Ri said in a statement published by state media outlet KCNA. Ri said Pyongyang was expressing its deep apprehension over the U.S. chief executive faulting the regular test fire, an exercise of our state's right to self-defense, as the violation of UN resolutions. If the U.S. continues with its thoughtless remarks, he said, without thinking of the consequences, it may be faced with something that is not good, he added, warning that North Korea was prepared to continue to increase their most thorough-going and overwhelming military power, unquote. The comments came at a time when Washington is in the final stages of a policy review on North Korea, with signals of a firm line on denuclearization, sanctions, and human rights. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Galing pag Spain yan? Bakit ang cheap? Akala ko na kuha mo lang din sa talipapa ng like 70% off.
Super funny ka talaga, no, Dadet?
Kamusta na ang buhay niyo sa Spain? Mayaman na ba kayo? To be paid in full 3 years? Stefan, nagsisimula pa lang tayong kumita nun. Paano ko ibabalik lahat ang pera mo? Are you crazy?
Well, yes. Baliw ako. Para pumayag na yan lang ibabayad mo sa akin.
I cannot believe.
Actually, may ibang para naman eh. I want to marry Althea.
Benedict.
Buenas noches, mi amor. Althea, good to see you here. Di mo naman sinabi sa akin, may tinatago ka palang fiancé. Yung kapatid ko, di marunong gumanti yun. Kaya kapag may nananakit sa kanya, akong gumaganti para sa kanya.
Ikaw ay akin at ako'y sa'yo. Habang may
Welcome back to the news. Philippine Ambassador to Beijing, Jose Santiago Santa Romana, expects the situation at the Julian Felipe Reef to improve very, very soon, but declined to give a time frame when the Chinese fishing vessels would leave the area. Despite this, Ambassador Santa Romana said the country must remain vigilant and closely monitor movements on the ground. Watch this.
We don't have to panic. No? Kung tatandaan natin nung mga 2 taon na, no, to 2019, nangyari din to first half of 2019. Pero no, nangyari sa Pag-asa, yung tinatawag nating swarming of Chinese militia or Chinese fishing boats. Nagkaroon din tayo ng protesta, nagkaroon ng diplomatic exchange. As a matter of fact, pumunta pa si Presidente dito, nakausap pa si President Xi. Tapos, nagkapaliwanagan. At through diplomacy, ay nagkalinawan. Tapos over time, nakita natin na unti-unting nawala or nabawasan yung mga Chinese ships doon. At tumuloy na sila kung ano man ang dapat nilang gawin na fishing or whatever they had to do. So I look at this as a situation that we should be concerned with, but we don't have to panic about, and we should just exercise a high degree of vigilance, a high degree of monitoring, and see what happens on the ground. I expect that this matter can be resolved with an abundance of diplomacy, and given the friendly relations between the Philippines and China and their assurance that this is not a permanent situation, that is what we expect. No? Ang ayaw natin mangyari dito, na nandyan lang sila permanente or na magiging occupation or reclamation yan. No? Yun ang iniiwasan natin. Kaya sa pag-uusap, nagkalinawan naman na kasi sa punto natin, ito ay bahagi ng ating EEC. At dahil dito, yung fishing, yung whatever, pwedeng freedom of navigation, pwede kang dumaan, no? And if you seek shelter, as long as it's temporary. So yun ang tinitignan natin ngayon.
$100 million more children than were expected now have trouble reading because of school closures linked to COVID-19. The warning from UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Agency, comes in a new report, which shows that basic reading skills were already on a downward curve before the pandemic. In 2020, instead of 450 million children having reading difficulties, that number jumped to 584 million as a result of the pandemic. Schooling has been disrupted for an average of 25 weeks since the beginning of the pandemic, according to UNESCO, with learning losses expected to be highest in the Latin America and Caribbean region and in Central and Southern Asia. To tackle what the UN agency has called a potential generational catastrophe, it is calling for schools to reopen with greater support for teachers, initiatives to prevent pupils dropping out, and an acceleration of the availability of digital learning tools. It's convening education ministers from all over the world on Monday, March 29, to discuss these recommendations.
In other news, Italy will reopen schools for younger students and ease the coronavirus lockdown on Rome and its surrounding region, the government announced on Friday. The classes for the lower grades will be allowed to reopen countrywide, even in higher risk regions still classified as red under the most severe restrictions. The change will come into effect after the Catholics' Easter holidays. Schools were closed in most of Italy on March 15 after the government introduced a partial shutdown to contain a third wave of infections fueled by virus variants. Meanwhile, a vaccination campaign in Rome continues despite delays across the country. These delays have only partly been due to the supply shortage that has affected most of Europe.
In other news, U.S. President Joe Biden blasted the passage in Georgia of an election law that has sparked an outcry and accusations of racism as Republican lawmakers seek to tighten rules for voting around the country. Let's listen in.
It's an atrocity. The idea, if you want any indication that it has nothing to do with fairness, nothing to do with decency, they passed a law saying you can't provide water for people standing in line while they're waiting to vote. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting. You can't provide water for people about to vote. Give me a break.
Many Republicans have echoed Trump's claims of voting irregularities there. In Georgia, the new law will cut back the number of ballot drop boxes to force people to travel further to turn in a ballot and make it harder to register to vote. The Georgia law also gives the Republican-controlled state legislature more power to take control of local voting operations if problems are alleged. And it says specifically that volunteers cannot distribute water or food to people waiting in line to vote, as volunteers and social groups did last year in the state, in areas where lines to vote were long, often mainly heavily African American precincts.
In other news, the U.S. ambassador who made a splash in Vietnam by making a rap video is getting a promotion as the top diplomat for Asia under President Joe Biden. Daniel Crittenbrink, a career diplomat who speaks Chinese and Japanese, was nominated by Biden to be the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific, according to a White House statement. Crittenbrink became an internet sensation last month during Tet, or the Lunar New Year, that is Vietnam's most important annual celebration, as he put out his own rap video to send his greetings. In a performance that combined both astute diplomatic messaging and a healthy touch of irony, Crittenbrink appeared strolling the streets of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City in his suit, wearing headphones accompanied by Vietnamese music stars. Despite his sense of humor, Crittenbrink has a serious background, previously serving as the #2 at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing and as the top White House aide on Asia policy under former President Barack Obama. Crittenbrink's nomination, which requires Senate confirmation, comes as tensions mount between the United States and China on issues ranging from human rights to trade to Beijing's assertive military moves. Eagle News will be right back. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Tawagin na natin ang pinakagwapo na pagkagwapo, ladies and gentlemen. Let us all welcome Victor Wood!
Nagustuhan nila Direk at Sir Orly yung performance nyo. Kaya sa next episode, mag-partner na kayo.
Record ka ang sarili mong album. Wala. Hindi papatok yung ganyan style.
Payagan nyo lang ako mag-record uli.
I'm sorry, my love, if I've broken your heart.
Si Arceli nga po pala, fiancé ko.
Hindi ka naman dapat kabahan eh.
To forgive me.
Kapag nakapag-ipon ako, papakasal na tayo.
Ihanda nyo na yung kontrata schedules. Ilalabas natin to sa buong Pilipinas.
Let me kiss and hold you tight.
Kalahati lang ng TF ni Rico at ni Ray yung TF ko eh.
Kung sino ang mas sikat, yun ang mas may malaking talent fee.
Eh kung kasikatan lang pag-uusapan, masikat naman ako sa mga yan.
Noon yun, Victor. Pero hindi mo inilagaan.
Kaya kong bumangon kahit wala ka.
Welcome back. And take a look at these images of red lava bubbling and flowing out of a fissure in a valley in southwestern Iceland. A volcanic eruption in Iceland has transformed a tranquil green valley into an ominous-looking scene. Its first dark secrets beginning to emerge as volcanologists suggest the eruption could last longer than previously thought. Experts had initially predicted that the eruption of the fissure would be brief, likely dying out after a few days. But due to the constancy of the lava flow and based on the first analysis of the magma, they now suspect the eruption could be a long hauler. The relatively controlled lava flow has since the weekend drawn hordes of curious onlookers to the Geldin-Gadalur Valley, eager to catch a rare first-hand glimpse of the hypnotic display of bubbling orange-red molten rock. The authorities block access only sporadically in case of bad weather or high levels of toxic gas emissions. According to preliminary calculations, the magma emerging from the volcano is almost 1,190 degrees Celsius or 2,170 degrees Fahrenheit. Daredevil spectators who hike 90 minutes from the nearest road have grilled sausages, bacon, and even marshmallows on the hot lava as it cools to basalt rock. A scientific study of the freshly minted basalt suggests that the magma has come from deep within the Earth's mantle, around 15 kilometers or 9 miles beneath the surface. Now, magma from a source this deep has not been seen in this region for thousands of years, according to Feinstein Sigmundson, a geophysicist at the Institute of Earth Sciences.
In other news, southwestern Angola is experiencing its worst drought in 4 decades, with a severe impact on crops, according to the United Nations World Food Program on Friday. Watch this.
We've been waiting for rain for 6 months. 6 months without rain, and before that we had winter. When the rains came, we were so thankful. We were relieved. But they came too hard, and then we had no way of tending to our crops. We were not able to go to the fields.
People are starting to move to other regions of Angola and across the border into Namibia, the WFP said. WFP spokesman Thomson Piri told reporters in Geneva that, quote, abnormal dryness is hampering the 2020-2021 rainy season, which typically runs from November to April, with very little to no rainfall. He said, people I have spoken to are saying not since 1981 have they experienced such levels of dryness. Piri said Angola had been experiencing drought episodes since December with below average rainfall in several provinces, and the situation is not expected to improve in the coming months. He said WFP was concerned about chronic food insecurity and malnutrition in worst affected areas as water supply diminishes, severely impacting crops with losses of up to 40% and increasing the risk for livestock.
In other environment news, a cluster of tornadoes swept through the southern U.S. state of Alabama Thursday evening, killing at least 5 people, according to authorities. And video posted on social media showed debris swirling at the air, trees uprooted, and homes damaged. I urge all folks in the path of these tornadoes and storm systems to remain on high alert, Governor Kay Ivey tweeted. 3 members of one family were killed while sheltering in a wooden structure in the town of Ohatchi, and another died in a mobile home there. Calhoun County Coroner Pat Brown told AFP. Another person died in the town of Wellington, according to Brown. The sheriff's office said on Facebook that there had been significant damage in Calhoun County and advised residents to stay home and off the roads as more storms were expected. More than 35,000 customers in Alabama were without power as of Thursday evening U.S. time, according to poweroutage.us. Officials said dangerous weather was expected to continue through the night.
Strict lockdowns and travel limitations during the pandemic have sparked fresh interest in immersive virtual travel experiences, which have become more accessible and affordable with new apps and virtual reality hardware. Watch this.
England. It dropped me off at the, I think it's the Times. I mean, it's similar to kind of like online groups where you really get to know somebody online or in VR, and you feel like you really know them, sometimes better than people that you know in physical space. When I finally ordered the Oculus, I was like, this is, you know, I justified the cost as, well, you know, it could be cheaper than therapy and last longer and, you know, in different ways. There's so much kind of, so much that you can get from it, just feeling like you can travel or feeling like you can go out of your house or feeling like you can interact really in meaningful ways with other people from around the world or friends and family in what feels like a shared physical space. My sister who lives in Washington, in Alcove, we sat down and were able to play a game of checkers together at a table in what feels like a very realistic living room. So you do feel like you can really just sit down and you feel physically like you're in a shared space, which is just different than playing an online game. You know, you can see the body movement.
Jem Jenkins-Jones was stuck at home in Wales for much of last year amid pandemic lockdowns, but managed to fulfill a promise to her 10-year-old daughter to see the northern lights from Iceland and South Africa's game reserves in virtual reality. With the tourism industry largely obliterated by the coronavirus outbreak, virtual reality has emerged as both a substitute for real-world travel and a complement to help people plan their next trip. App developers have created a range of travel experiences during the pyramids of Egypt, the Taj Mahal, the savannas of Kenya, or the Antarctic from a kayak. These come from commercial operators or organizations such as the National Geographic or World Wildlife Fund. Users can opt for hardware from Facebook's Oculus, Sony's PlayStation, or the inexpensive Google Cardboard, among others. Some gear costs as little as $300, and many apps are free. A report by research firm Global Data shows that virtual and augmented reality had already been gaining momentum from travel operators and tourism boards before the pandemic to enable people to get a taste of a destination before going there. Global data analyst Ralph Hollister said the pandemic may be giving the sector a lift that will endure even after the pandemic.
Now, people in Tokyo flock to admire the cherry blossoms in full bloom at parks and rivers, despite coronavirus warnings against holding traditional parties under the delicate flowers. Take a look.
Maybe we should schedule that for next year. Let's do that,
Or we could
Thelma.
go there. We could go there virtually.
Yeah, but you can't smell the flowers
That's
virtually.
true.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join us again on Monday. I am CJ Hero.
Yes, let's do see each other back on Monday. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Hi, my name is Dan. I'm from Nebraska. I'm not a big city boy. Then 3 years ago, I moved to Hanoi. Check the calendar, Ted is coming soon.
Huwag tayong mag-alala. Kung ganito man, kalala ang problema ng mundo, tandaan ninyo, meron tayong Diyos na handang-handang tumulong sa atin. Ang kailangan ay makita ng Diyos yung pagkakaisa, pagtutulong-tulong at yung kasipagan ng tao sa kanyang paghahanap buhay.
Ang buhay dito sa mundo, puno ng hirap at pasakit. Maraming tao ang nagdurusa sa dami at bigat ng problema. Kahirap